Thanks, Jamie, for coming on. We're super excited to have you as our client spotlight this month. We worked together a while ago, but we're happy we finally got you on. So we're here with Jamie, the CEO of Terra Energy, based in Miami. And I guess to start it out, maybe do you want to give just a quick 60-second background about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Nina. I've been in energy for almost over 20 years now, actually. And started in oil and gas and then transitioned to renewable energy. I really like energy because it's really tied to progress and it helps evolve what we do as humans. And especially you can see that now with AI, right? Because all it requires is a lot of energy. Um, I started a company about 10 years ago in Mexico. It's residential solar, and it became the largest in Mexico. And then we opened operations in the US almost a year and a half, close to 2 years ago. First in Florida, that's why I'm in Miami right now. That's where our US headquarters are based. And very exciting to just see how new technology, specifically in the energy industry, just keeps becoming more mainstream.
You guys are doing some really cool things. So could you give a brief background about Terra Energy?
Yeah. We are rooftop solar, but with a different approach. We offer customers an energy service that is way more affordable than any other solar option with much better terms. It's an energy subscription. Most solar is about buying solar systems and having to deal with them, get long-term financing, service the system, operate the systems. We, instead of doing that, we just subscribe customers to a green and cheaper energy service than anything available. So it's a very easy transition to renewable energy. It literally makes it a lot easier and faster. So that's why customers love our offering, because we tell them, listen, you're paying $500 a month on electricity, switch to us and you pay $250. And that's it. It comes from a solar panel. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to worry about anything. Now you use green energy at a much more affordable rate.
For sure. And I guess what was the specific problem when you started Terra? What was the specific problem that you identified? Was it specifically around the cost factor from the customers, or was there another kind of pain point that you identified, and that's what led you to starting Terra?
So yeah, the big problem is that historically infrastructure was not decentralized. When utilities were created, it was about building very large power plants with very little technology available outside of the cities, and then just send all of that electricity into the cities. As technology progressed and solar became an option, computers made everything a lot easier. The business model on how to fund the infrastructure never really changed for a decentralized solution like solar. So the financing, the construction, everything was using the old ways, and that created a lot of problems, which didn't allow solar to scale. If you look in the US, solar, it's only about maybe 2-3% solar. It was the same in Mexico. And it's not that the technology doesn't work. It's just that it was not, the business model was using old ways of funding infrastructure, not new ways. And that would create inefficiencies, cost structure that is much more expensive than what it should be. Agreements with the customers that customers don't like, very confusing, very troublesome. So solar, even though the technology works really well, it hasn't really scaled in Mexico or the US to the levels that it should. And that was the biggest problem, that it was just not aligned with what the customer wanted. When we started Terra, we took a new look on what the best and most optimal way to do decentralized energy production, how to fund it, how to build it, how to sell it and present it to the customers. And we essentially redid those three pieces. The funding piece, we don't follow traditional infrastructure funding mechanisms. We do not do the traditional EPC type of setup. We do it differently. And for customers, we have agreements that are much better for them. So we solve all of those pieces and it scales a lot faster. That's why we became the largest in Mexico. In Florida, it took us about 12 months to become the largest in Florida. And now that we're opening in Texas and in other locations, the same trend is happening. Like people really like what we offer because we looked at it completely differently.
Can you touch a little bit more on like the specific differentiation of you guys? I think that's
Yeah.
something that's really special.
So, for example, if you want to go solar, you can either sign a long-term lease or a long-term loan for 25 years where you own the equipment and then you end up saving maybe 10, 15% versus the what you pay to the utility. That's the traditional solar way. When
Mhm.
technology becomes better, technology always improves in just a matter of a few years. All the customers that bought this technology are stuck with this technology, right? So for example, solar panels that were manufactured 10 years ago, it's not that they're obsolete, but they're very different to what get the same with batteries and all these electrical components that go into a solar system. Um, so then customers, if they want to go solar today, the only option they have is to sign a long-term contract, so essentially a second mortgage to buy technology they don't understand that changes really fast and with very little savings, be $10, $15 a month on savings. So why would you do it? Only people that care about the environment are the ones that really go solar today. And so what we did was created a short-term subscription that people can cancel if they don't like it. It's 40 to 50% less than the utility instead of just like a 5 to 10%. And we upgrade the technology, we maintain the system. So very similar to what people do with power plants outside of the cities, right? The owner of the power plant is always making sure that it's running at the most optimal way with the best technology, best operations and maintenance. We do the same thing, but on rooftops. And that allows us to just give customers a subscription that they can always cancel if they don't like at a much better pricing than anything available with technology upgrades. At the end of the day, it's still solar, but with a completely different approach to customers. Enable for us to be able to offer this to customers, which I think that the first thing you should always focus is on the customer and really solve a problem for them. And then once you identify that problem, you figure out how to solve it. So we identified what needed to happen on the customer side. And then we realized that by restructuring the way we fund this infrastructure, we could improve everything from the cost structure to also the installation and the entire supply chain of building a solar system, which allows us to have a better product, but also a much more profitable solution for our
Mhm.
investors. And it was just by aligning to what the customer needs. And then we have a better product that makes more money.
Yeah,
So that makes it easier because then customers want it and also our investors want to support more our growth.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, can you also highlight maybe what has been the progress to date now? Where are you at, or what are some big milestones you guys have hit so far?
Yeah. So we started the company 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago in Mexico. A big milestone was to become the largest in Mexico and be fully funded by traditional infrastructure money, but in a new way. So that showed that the business model completely works in a developing country. Then a second milestone was to do our US expansion and prove the business model and became the largest in Florida and much faster than what it took us in Mexico back 10 years ago. That was a great milestone. The first time US banks started funding our operation was a big milestone because then it means that it's not only venture, right? To see if it works. It's actually a profitable, proven solution that the risk or enough risk to invite even banks to fund our operation. So that was great. And then another big milestone right now is our US expansion. We're open operations in Texas, South Carolina past few months. We're opening operations in California, hopefully in the next couple months. And a big milestone that excites me is that they put a sunset on the tax credits that help fuel the solar energy. One of the reasons why investors always like their business model is that we don't depend on the tax credits. Obviously, it helps our economics, but making that jump at the same time as we expand to the nation to be able to be fully sustainable without tax credits is something super exciting, because then it gives a lot of sustainability to the company when timing is great. I think the biggest commodity in the future, seeing how things are progressing, will be energy, right? Like the biggest thing that all countries need the most for over the next couple decades is going to be energy. So having a solution that can scale in that environment without the needs of subsidies, and just making sure that we align the customer with the capital and in a way that makes everyone happy is going to be a big milestone. So, and that's what we're working on.
Um, So I guess that kind of goes into my next question, but I was going to ask, what's your guys' top priority right now, and I guess how can others also listening potentially help contribute in any way to help achieve that?
It's building the team. It's been challenging to get enough people to join at the pace where we jumped to hundreds of employees over the past 12 months just in our US operation, and just inviting more people to join and make sure that they're right fit, and then that they're doing what they want and align that with the vision of the company. It's not easy. Things break.
Yeah.
Everyone says that things break when you go fast, and they make it seem like it's a good thing. I'm sure it's a good thing, but it's a painful thing, right? Because if you just things keep breaking and breaking. That challenge, it's also an exciting challenge, right? Because you have to invite people and explain them what you're building, like building a team for a fun quest. So it is
Yeah.
fun but painful.
Yeah, I mean, they say that people management is probably the most difficult aspect of business for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, do you have, a lot of also the listeners that are usually listening to this, they're other founders, investors, other operators within the ecosystem. So I'm curious if you had any advice for, let's say, an up and coming founder, and a lot of our listeners and clients are usually typically on the earlier stage, like seed, Series A. So I guess any advice to those founders that you'd have?
Yeah. Make sure that you are solving a real problem. A lot of people get trapped on trends. I feel like if it's the AI trend, the blockchain trend, the whatever trend, and they build stuff that is not solving a real problem. So I think that's key. The second advice would be to be very passionate about what you're building, because it's tough, right? You run out of cash, you have people issues, you have to pivot 100 different times. It is a fun process if you really like it, if you're really passionate about it. If you're not, it will burn people out. And I feel like that's what ends up happening, that people don't have the grit to just keep pushing until it works. Because if you keep pushing enough, things work. It's just about keep pushing it and just never stop trying. But if you're not super passionate about it, at some point you quit.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, I mean, a lot of our listeners are also actively fundraising, or they're investors that are investing. So would you have any advice for other founders that are also, specifically fundraising based on your experience and even your expansion from Mexico and expanding into the US from that perspective?
On the fundraising, you mean?
Yeah, and from your experience, like speaking with investors and the storytelling aspect, and a lot of the things that are in line with kind of like also the work that we do at Lion Run.
I would say know your numbers and know your story. I feel like oftentimes I get presented opportunities on startups or companies that want to work with us or things like that. And people don't know their business well enough. And I think if you're going to raise money, and you must have a very clear vision of what you're building, and you need to be able to explain it really well to your people and to your team for them to execute that vision. I remember when I was in college, and you had really difficult classes. You know your subject when you can explain it to someone else. And when someone else is in a study group, and if you don't know it really well, it's very hard to explain it to someone else. I think it's the same in a company. If you don't know everything really well as a founder, it's going to be very hard to explain it to someone else. And if people don't explain it, they either can't trust you or they can't execute it, can't execute your what needs to be built. So going to the details, going to the different scenarios, understand what could go wrong, and have a lot of KPIs and understanding of your company. I think it's extremely important to be successful. The problem is that it takes time, right? Because it
Yeah,
takes time and requires a lot of curiosity. When you find something that you don't understand within your same company, you have to go in and understand why those things are happening or what do they need. I think even if it's a large company, you should really understand what's happening inside the company.
for sure. So I guess to kind of wrap on this end, is there anything like kind of that you mentioned like your highest priority right now is really hiring? Is there anything else like anyone that maybe listening can do to be of help to you, whether again on fundraising, hiring, whatever it may be, they're listening, but if not, it's fine. If there's
Yeah, on
anything
the
specific.
hiring piece, what has helped me now is understand what I'm really bad at. Well, understand obviously what I'm really good at, but also understand what my deficiencies are so that I can hire people and complement the team with. It is very hard for me to not see what I can't see, right? But if I know that I am, for example, and let me give you a couple examples. I'm very optimistic, which I think is great for a CEO, right? Because you have to be optimistic. The problem is that I overpromise on a lot of things because it's my bias and there's nothing I can do to change it. I can either try to get better at it or I can hire a team that complements that piece so I try to do that. I try to make sure that everyone understands what they're really good at and making sure that the company needs that, but also understand what they're really bad at so that we can make a team that complements each other so that we're not tripping.
Yeah, amazing. All right. So I think that kind of wraps up that section. This section's more like kind of getting feedback on from
Yeah.
my side, but and I can stop recording, or if you don't mind, I can also, if I can, like I can get it can be cut out, but it's also just good for us. But and I know it's been some time since like we worked together, but it's always good to understand like the mindset of the founder and understand like what are ways that we can also continue also to improve and to add more value to founders. So I'm curious, like going back, I know you guys had like a bit of a roller coaster over the last year, but going back to when we initially like had worked together, if you can explain like either the struggle that you were facing at the time or what was like the specific need at the time and that essentially led you to that led us to working together.
Yes. Our struggle is that the growth that we saw in the company and that we continue to see requires a lot of working capital for us to be able to keep up with the customer demand. In that process, we need to tell the story, right? And we need to make sure that the story makes sense to investors and that we pitch our ideas. In that process, I think it was great to work with you guys because you help first make a clear message, right? Of what we need to do. And I feel like if you do it internally, it's hard to just give an outside opinion on the business. Work with someone that has done this many, many times and understand how the audience, pool investors look at it, how other companies have done it before. It pushes the founders or the companies to take a different look at what they're doing. Sometimes, like I remember, I got annoyed because I'm like, why are they not understanding what I'm saying? And a lot of people think that is their problem when the rest don't understand, but it is the problem of the founder if you cannot communicate your message correctly. And I think you guys help a lot because we're like, okay, no, let's actually build the message. Let's try to get everything that you have in the brain and put it in a cohesive way that people can understand that it makes sense. And when you go through that process, you also realize a lot of opportunities or problems that you have in your initial idea. It's not until you put it out of, or say it to someone or write it down on a paper that you're like, oh, this doesn't make sense. And they're right. It's just incomplete or it's vague or needs some further work. So that helped us a lot. And it was also very beautiful. I don't think I'm necessarily I think I'm much more of an engineer. I have an engineering background, so I focus on functionality, not necessarily other aspects, but other aspects are very important. Like beautiful needs to look nice. Instead of me trying to create something beautiful, which is not my strength, it's better to create something really functional and optimal and then partner up with someone that can help me communicate it in a succinct way that looks nice.